double the number of dollars to 20, but you still only have 10 loaves of bread, all of a sudden it's $2 for each loaf. It's pretty simple math. And when you tax that bread production by taxing your farmers and your truckers and your manufacturers, well, you add more to the price. The more government spends, the more things cost. It's just inflation, isn't it? Just inflation. So what are we going to do about it? Well, we're going to reverse the very policies that caused the problem in the first place, starting with getting government spending under control. This is how we're going to do it. Let's walk through some of the plans here. They put together a $35 billion infrastructure bank. Well, we need infrastructure, but we don't need another bank. The only thing this bank has done is pay bonuses to executives and give loan guarantees to powerful corporations, even though those corporations and that bank have not completed a single project in 5 years. I'm going to get rid of the federal infrastructure bank and save that money for taxpayers. We'll save $1 billion by defunding the CBC. Where are they? They stopped covering my events for some reason. I can't understand. Oh, it's funny. Well, I guess Rosemary Martin is not going to be sending me a Christmas card this year. You know what else we're going to do? We're going to manage your money in government the way you manage it in your household. You know, when you add $1 of spending in one place, you find $1 of savings somewhere else to pay for it. That's because the oldest law of economics is scarcity. And the oldest law of politics is to ignore the oldest law of economics, right? Politicians are the only creatures in the universe who do not have to live with scarcity. Why? Because they just pass it on to someone else. The birds and the trees, the fish in the seas, they all have to make maximum use of limited resources, but the politician can just pass it on in inflation, debt, and taxes for the people. So we need to internalize that scarcity and force the same decisions on politicians that you have to make in your life with something called the pay-as-you-go act. Here's how it works. Yeah, very simple principle. You bring in $1 of spending, you have to find $1 of savings. The Americans had this law in the 1990s. They allowed them to balance the budget and pay off $400 billion of debt in just a few years, but as soon as that law lapsed, they went right back into deficit, proving once again that politicians need legal limits on their spending. You've been pinching your pennies long enough. It's time for government to pinch its pennies too. Instead of creating more cash, we need to create more of what cash buys. The principle is simple. Instead of doubling the number of dollars from 10 to 20, imagine if you doubled the number of loaves of bread from 10 to 20. You had $10 and 20 loaves of bread. All of a sudden, it's 50 cents. The purchasing power of the dollar goes further. So how are we going to unleash that production? We've got to get the government gatekeepers out of the way. They stand in the way of new housing, of food production, and of the production of our own Canadian natural resources. So, let's start with housing. Per capita of any country in the G7. Why? We have the most land to build on. Well, the answer is local government gatekeepers block builders from building. The cost of getting permits approved and the other associated taxes and development charges equals $650,000 for each unit of housing in the city of Vancouver. Of course, all of that gets passed on to the end consumer. And when Vancouver has more expensive housing, well, people have to move out further. And the prices radiate further and further out into the neighboring jurisdictions. And you're seeing it here. House prices have doubled here in 7 years. We have 35-year-olds living in their parents' basements. You know, I was asking in Vancouver, how is it possible to bring home a date when you live in your mom's basement? And one mother in the audience said, very carefully. But seriously, how can you build up credit history, collateral, get married, have kids if you can't own your own home? It is unacceptable in a country with this much land, labor, and lumber that we don't have more houses. So here's the plan.